Son. This ending of DCKO is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Okay, the ending of this is insane, but let's get into it, right? Let's just jump into this. So this kicks off from the last issue that we covered, which is that Lex Luthor now has the power of King Omega. So it's Lex Luthor versus Darkseid, right? Now the Heart of Apocalypse tells us, it says, and so the tournament's winner is chosen. And of course, Lex Luthor's ecstatic at the idea that he's the one that gets to fight Darkseid now. And he just says, face me, Darkseid, face this universe's champion, Lex Luthor. And Darkseid calls him out, right? He says, I'm right here, little one. Congratulations. Savor this moment. And then take the heart unto yourself. Gather your power, adopt your new form, and fight for your crown. Now, I want you to keep this statement in the back of your head, because by the time we get to the end of the story, the entire context behind this statement changes drastically. It changes drastically, right? Because at the moment, it looks like Darkseid is inviting Lex Luthor, taunting Lex Luthor, and to a degree he is. But what ends up happening is you jump back to the scene that we got at the very beginning of DCKO, when Darkseid had shown up in the universe, right? And basically had this whole new level of power, and then ultimately led to the formation of the Absolute Universe and all that. So what it does is it picks up with Lois, Clark, Batman, and Wonder Woman during their game night, right? And it's the same thing as before, right? Wonder Woman asking, is that Darkseid? And Superman saying, it is, but it's not, right? He's something new. And that's when the heart tells us it happens just as before. But that's the thing. Superman says, I can hear him. He's not just here, he's everywhere. And where initially, Bruce is like, well, I guess the game night's over, right? And they all put on their costumes and they all go out there to fight Darkseid just like they did in the beginning. Superman doesn't go anywhere, but the heart chimes in and it says, except this time at the window, Clark stops. And initially Lois is just like, Clark, like, what are you doing? And Clark just says, I know you're here, and I know what this is. Show yourself. And Time Trapper Doomsday appears, right? And he just says, Kal-El, right? And that's where Superman just says, Time Trapper, this is not a memory, is it? Right, you created a new timeline. This game night, it's not our future, it's a separate reality, and it always was. And that's where Time Trapper tells him, right, I had concerns whether I could trust anyone else in the Quantum Quorum or your allies. I suspected someone might be working with Darkseid, though Booster Gold's possession still surprises me. I created this pocket timeline to protect you if need be. And he asked the question, right, why just me? Why was I the one who was chosen? And Doomsday tells him, as Doomsday and Superman, you and I have been locked in a cycle of death and rebirth for years now, Kal-El. I have always believed my role to be that of your destroyer, and yet an unlikely source revealed the truth to me. And that's when we jump back to Superman number 35, which we have covered, and you will find it in the DCKO playlist below. But it was basically the revelation that Doomsday represents the concept of destruction, but through destruction comes new life. So he also represents rebirth. And that's when he tells Superman what it was that he was told, that he is not meant to destroy Superman, but instead to save Superman, so that Superman can destroy Darkseid. And he says, it is time to break the cycle. And Superman asks, right, like, what do you mean? How? And that's where Doomsday just grabs him and says, let me show you. And so in turn, he whisks Superman away. And he says, I have seen my share of endings, Kal-El. I have watched countless planets, universes, realities, all die. I have channeled Omega energy, but I have also seen beginnings, universes being born. Instead of control, chaos, wild, creative chaos. And I have channeled that energy to Superman, the opposite of Omega, alpha energy. I have realized the way to stop this cycle that we are on is that instead of granting you another ending, I must give you a new beginning. And that's where Superman asks, right, is that what you are offering? A second chance. And Doomsday just tells him, I contain both Omega and alpha energy. If I grant you all the power of creation inside of me, you may be reborn this one time instead of me. And Superman asks him, right, you won't be able to return ever. Now, this next part's huge because Doomsday tells him, listen to me, if there is a being who is meant to be King Omega, it's you. Some think the universe already tries to bend towards you, that it's a metaverse rather than a multiverse, reactive to you. Even if that is not the case, it should be. Now, this is a reference to Doomsday Clock and Dr. Manhattan, and it's one of the first times we've seen that since Doomsday Clock unfolded. That's one of the things to remember, right? When Doomsday Clock took place and we ended up having the Watchmen basically showing up in the main DC universe, Dr. Manhattan, in analyzing Superman, realized he's effectively the focal point of all of existence, right? He's a metatextual character. He represents pure goodness, and the universe bends itself to him. It almost revolves around him in some capacity. And so that's what's being referenced here. This is huge, right? Because that's when Doomsday tells him, if I do this, you must promise me something. And Superman says anything, and Doomsday just says, when? And Superman says, I promise. And so that's when Doomsday says, then let us begin, and starts bestowing Superman with the power of creation. And so in that moment, Doomsday just dies, right? Disappears and vanishes. And so then you jump back to Lex, and the Heart of Apocalypse says, I do not hear it at first. Luthor is too busy yelling, right? Screaming about all the power he has, right? The power, I contain everything, so on. But then the Heart says, but then I do. Something cracking, something deep inside. If only I had a mouth to smile. Because all these various superheroes that were basically defeated or killed during the DCKO event and have been locked away into stone, they're all being freed now. And so Lex Luthor doesn't realize it's happening. And he says, so, shall we negotiate the terms of your surrender, Darkseid? And Darkseid just says, I think I'll take my chances. And that's when Lex just says, then all that's left to say. But then his power starts waning, and he starts vanishing, disappearing. And that's where Superman arrives and says, all that's left to say is, ding, ding. Because we have a new King Omega. Superman has arrived on the scene with the power of creation, right? The power of Omega energy and Alpha energy. But there's a caveat, because then Darkseid says, as I had hoped, Kryptonian, now, don your crown. And the Heart says, and so Clark does. He reaches out and takes it, the role he was destined for, and the universe is reborn in his image. He is there in that very first explosion, there in every superheated particle of matter racing onward, quarks and gluons, there in the burning dust and gas that collects into the first stars and in the rock that gathers into protoplanets. He is there in the first life, single-celled things in the deep dark. He's there in the next forms of life and the next forms and the next. He is every stem, every trunk. He is the wet, quivering legs growing tall and strong up towards the sun, always toward the sun. He breathes in and out. 1,000,000 years pass. 100 million. He coaxes life higher and higher. Inside himself, he has remade our universe only better. Now, it's important to understand here. This is a very important thing to understand. He has not reset continuity. This is not a reboot from DC. It's important to specify that because it may look that way. He's actually done something else entirely, and it's amazing what he's done here, right? Because the Heart says, when he has forged enough, he calls to me the Heart of Apocalypse, and I take my place inside his great chest. He is the universe's champion. It's King Omega. And now, let the War of Kings begin. And that's when the two of them start going back and forth. And it's amazing, right? Because the Heart says they fight across space, everywhere at once, battling through a world transformed by Darkseid. Not two beings, but two realities at war. Each punch that Clark throws contains his baby universe, struggling to be born. He punches and he punches, but in the end, Darkseid laughs. For a moment, Clark cannot breathe. When he looks up, Darkseid is coming for the kill. So I call out to him directly. We are one now, after all. Move, Clark, dodge. And at the last minute, he does. So that's what Superman is doing here, right? Superman has basically used his Alpha and Omega energy to create a pocket universe. And now he's drawing energy and power off of that very universe that he created. But it's growing, it's budding, it's still expanding. And that's what happens here, because he just kind of asks, right, where am I? And the heart tells him the only safe place, the past, everything after this, the future, the present, they belong to Darkseid. Now catch your breath. Remember what you are fighting for. And it asks, can you see it? And Superman says yes, and the heart says good. Now build. And so Superman starts building out this universe. And he says, and Clark does, he builds his universes present. He leaves death and sadness, yes, but makes them notes in larger chords of wonder. He builds out harmonies, balances pain with empathy, connects power to wisdom, redrawing lines, stringing notes, and it is beautiful. Now, this is a phenomenal moment here, because one of the big criticisms that Lex Luthor had of Superman during the DC KO event, right? We remember that in the early days of the tournament, is that when they were vying over the power for the Heart of Apocalypse, and it was the tie-in events, and it was Superman fighting Lex Luthor, that Lex told him Superman does not deserve the Heart of Apocalypse, because if he got that power, he would create this quote-unquote perfect world. And to a degree, it would be easy to make that assumption. A world where everyone lives happily, where there is no pain and there is no suffering. But the reality here is that as painful and tragic as loss is, the pain that comes with loss reminds us how much we cared about the people that we lost. If we never felt anything for people who die, then it means that we never really cared about them that much in the first place, right? So that feeling of loss is a reflection of love. And Superman values that more than anything else. So that means that death has to exist here. People lose their lives, right? Different things like that, wars, conflicts, and so on. But that's the crazy thing, is because even then, it's still a utopia, right? Utopias take time to build. They don't just happen overnight. And that's when the heart says, he was born for this. Omega surges through him. I am so in awe that I don't even see Darkseid coming. I yell just in time, Clark behind you, and he ducks, slips into the past even further. But then it starts to turn into a cat and mouse game, because Superman keeps going further and further into the past in order to escape Darkseid, while continually trying to build this universe that he is creating. And the Heart of Apocalypse says, but the blows come from everywhere, fists, beams. Picture your universe, I tell him, draw power from it. But Darkseid is too fast, too strong. Clark can only back away, ceding more and more ground. Another era becomes as Darkseid, and another, and I feel myself convulse. Because now, we're fighting through the time stream, right? Keep in mind, everything that was happening in the DCKO event was basically a kind of time bubble created by Doomsday in order to protect the present so Darkseid couldn't infect it. Almost like a force field, right, around that period in time. But Darkseid was still permeating everything, right? The future of the DC universe controlled by Darkseid, parts of the past controlled by Darkseid. But it was like a tidal wave, right, just crashing over a chunk of land. It takes time for that wave to cover the entirety of that landmass. And so where Superman's at now, that tidal wave, right, the changes in the time stream from Darkseid have not reached it yet. But as Darkseid chases him, he represents the tidal wave, and the tidal wave is traveling into the past. That's what's happening here, right? It's awesome, because at that point, the heart says, Darkseid lands a hook across. Clark is a constellation barely held together, lines snapping between stars. And that's where the heart tells him, fight, right? Hold your ground. He grits his teeth, but he does not answer me. He just retreats and retreats until finally his back is against it, the Big Bang itself, the only thing left unclaimed by Darkseid. And that was the goal of Superman. Because what ends up happening here, right? This is nuts. I told you guys, the story's fantastic, right? The heart says, move, you are cornered, which is when Superman finally answers. And he says, I am right where I want to be. Because the heart says, the Big Bang, this point, it contains everything, all matter, all possibilities, all past, presents, and futures. If he absorbs it all and takes it for himself, the Omega, he will be as powerful as Darkseid. And that's exactly what Superman does. He literally absorbs the power of the Big Bang. This is some Silver Age type stuff, right? He absorbs the power of the Big Bang and then goes to fight Darkseid. And Darkseid doesn't initially know what's happening. He doesn't understand what's taking place here. And Superman just says, in Kansas, it's called playing possum, and just clocks him, right? Just clocks Darkseid with literally the fist of God. It's crazy, right? And that's where the heart says, I send all the Omega in me to his arms, his fists. They go blow for blow, punches that make whole galaxies shudder. And he just cheers them on, right? Cheers him on, like, hit him, Superman, like, punch him as hard as you possibly can. Take this guy out. And Superman even asks the question, how long have we been fighting for? And the heart just says, 1,000,000 years, 100 million, no more rounds, no titles, just existence or annihilation. You have to keep going. And the heart says, Clark hits Darkseid so hard that black holes vomit starlight across the void. My fire pits roar. And Superman asks, right, I can do this, right? I can win it. Can you feel this? Because as the fight goes on longer and longer, and Superman's holding his ground, he's winning, right? He's beating Darkseid. And there's a part of this that kind of leads you to wonder, was there an aspect of him that believed he couldn't win? Was there a part of him that thought that he would not be able to pull this off? But the heart tells him, right, I can feel you winning here. And Superman just says, me alone. And the heart just tells him, yes, right, you alone, the sole winner. And Superman says, that is why I'm not playing anymore, and stops. Like, literally stops the fight dead in its tracks. And the heart tells him, right, what are you talking about, right? Hit him. You have to defeat him. And Superman says, no. And the heart asks him, why, right? Think of your universe. Look at this universe that you are creating and what this universe could be. A universe at peace, safe behind your shield, where everyone is legion. It's perfect, Clark. It's what everyone wants. And the response of Superman is maybe, but not me. And this is important because it goes directly to the heart of everything that Superman stands for. Because the heart tells him, no, right? Don't do this. What will you gain? The blast might knock him back, maybe a few months, potentially a year, but you will be back where you started and worse off than you started here because he will continue to gain power. You will not. And he says, you cannot do this, right? And that's where Superman just says, for the record, I am not quitting. And then he just like summons all the other superheroes who were here, right? Every other superhero who had basically been destroyed during DCKO is now resurrected by Superman. And they all just hit Darkseid with both Superman's power and power of their own. And the heart just says, you fool, why would you do this? And it says, you had a chance to win, to destroy Darkseid. Why wouldn't you take it? And that's Superman's response, is he says, it's simple, and Lois said it best. I like games where everyone wins. And he says, my name is Clark Kent, and I am not a King Omega, because we don't need one. No one hand should hold that much power, because when only one person wins, none of us do. What we need is not one hand to save us, but many. Every hand, their hand, and your hand too. This is an important thing. Right? This is an important concept because what Superman is effectively saying here is that their world is as amazing as it is or could become better because everyone contributes to it in some capacity. Everyone offers their own little tidbit here and a little tidbit there in order to make the world an inherently better place. If one person has total control of it all, then that world looks however that one person wants it to look. And let's say, for example, that someone rises to power, kills Superman, and takes his place as the new King Omega. Who's to say that they are as benign as he is? Who's to say that their vision of the universe is the same as his? With that level of power, they would transform it, they would twist it, and they would turn it into something that could potentially be worse and dark. Whereas if everyone has a hand in creating this new world that they live in, whatever form it takes, then that means everyone is now equally responsible for its success or its failure. So it's as much accountability as it is a benefit for the people who were here. It's a beautiful sentiment, and it's an incredible sentiment, right? Because at that point, Wonder Woman's like, thank you, Cal, you did good. And Lex is like, you call that good? And Batman's like, shut up, Lex. Right? But Superman addresses them, right? Still possessing all this power. And he says, you should go. The rift will keep you safe from what is about to happen. And that's where Batman's like, you're leaving us, aren't you? And Superman just says, I am, right? I have something I must do, but I will be back. And he just says, go. And so Superman kind of gives us this monologue, right, where he says, one last time, I think of my universe, its whole gleaming arc still inside of me, and then I undo it. I wind it back from its end to its beginnings, Omega to Alpha, until the whole thing exists in one single point, a contained creative explosion, which I set free. I watch as its power strikes the world that I love, a storm of alpha energy that ignites the earth again and again, setting strange new things in motion. And it's beautiful. Our world should always be one of wild beginnings and new starts. I know how tempting it is in dark times to embrace that darker side, Omega energy, to seek safety, to look to the old ways or something more familiar. But let our story be the opposite. Let it be wild, dangerous, brave, explosive, terrifying, mysterious, twisted, full of longing and redemption. But above all else, let it be daring and take us to the next level and beyond. That is how we all win. Now, this, of course, is teasing the entirety of the DC Next Level event. Now, this is not the ending that I'm talking about, right? The ending that I'm talking about is a whole different beast, right? So we get to the first epilogue, right? Which is Wonder Woman, Batman, and Lois Lane basically playing this board game. And they're kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't call it like a memoriam for Superman, but they're kind of talking about him, right, while they're here playing this game, right? And that's where it's kind of like, you didn't have to come, right? And Wonder Woman says, of course we did, Lois. Game night is game night, right? And Batman's just like, it's a friendly visit to make sure that you're okay. After all, your husband became God and just took off to a higher state of entropy. So we just kind of want to make sure that you're okay, right? That you're fine. But she just says, listen to me, right? Both of you. You don't have to handle me with kid gloves. I know my husband. He told me he had one last thing to do. After that, he will return to me. I just wish I knew why he did it this way. And the response of Batman is, he did it to win, right? He won for all of us. And that's where Lois just says, then we should keep playing this game. It's what he would want. But that's where Batman says, that's what worries me, Lois. We stopped Darkseid for now, but I don't think the game ever really ended. We beat him in the moment. We did not beat him permanently. And so that's when you switch over to the Watchtower, right? And Superman just says, my old friend is right. And now the players move across the board in new ways, right? You pick up with Mr. Terrific. Yes, we'll cover Justice League Unlimited, I promise. But Mr. Terrific says, right? Watchtower, record audio entry, Terrific Alpha 01. An explosion at the site of the tournament has imbued all those in the vicinity with a concentrated mass of both Alpha and Omega energy. Until I know more, keep this entry under restricted access. And then you get to Booster Gold. Don't worry, Big Blue. You found me, pulled me out of the dark, and I'm going to find you, wherever you disappear to at the end of this madness. So this kind of sets the stage for both of these characters, right? Mr. Terrific, being a part of the superhero community, also stands apart from it, right? Kind of analyzing it on the outside looking in. It's somewhat akin to when Black Panther first joined the Avengers in Marvel Comics, if for no other reason than to make sure they were not a credible threat to Wakanda. And so looking at it from that mindset, the whole question of Terrific is, are these guys with Alpha and Omega energy now a credible threat? Do I have to be worried about them? And that's where he's coming from. Of course, Booster Gold's whole stance is him just going into the time stream most likely to just find Superman, however that story unfolds. You jump to Metropolis, and it's Superboy Prime, right? It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman, right? So like he basically gets to finally be Superman the way that he imagined himself all those years ago before Crisis on Infinite Earths, when he first started reading Superman comics and learned about the character, right? You switch over to the Legion of Darkseid because they're still alive, right? The Legion of superheroes from the absolute universe. And the question's asked, right? We just hide in this world's future, and they have to. They don't really have a choice. If Darkseid does not find us, someone else will, right? You switch over to Cyborg, activate Heart of Cyborg protocol, right? This whole kind of new setup for these varying characters that exist out there. But also, if you remember the Night Fight tie-in, right, where Batman was basically coming across these different nightmarish realities for him and the Bat family. In one of them, Damian Wayne had taken over the role of Batman and basically become a kind of savior of Gotham, where he turned the city into a utopia. When Batman was in that reality, he left a box behind. And that's what happens here, right? That the son of Damian says, Grandpa left the box so we could communicate with him if he beat Darkseid. But it's not working, Dad. And that's where Damian says it's receiving signals from other places he visited, other futures, other Batmen. So this is kind of teasing the idea of Damian Wayne's Batman from Night Fight meeting Jason Todd from Night Fight and Dick Grayson from Night Fight. But more so than that, it leaves the door open to basically bring in an army of multiversal Batman, which is going to be important because of the ending of this. And so at that point, you jump over to Central City. Superman says, and others are being pulled into new mysteries because you pick up with Barry Allen, right? Keep in mind, Barry Allen's powerless in the here and now, right? Barry Allen does not have his abilities. What you guys saw in the Flash tie-in that we covered from issue number 30, that was just ensuring that Barry Allen got his powers the way he originally did. But the events that took place in Absolute Power are still intact, and those are still in continuity, using the power of the Speed Force to shut off access from the main DC universe to the rest of the multiverse. That's what cost Barry his powers. That's still the case here, right? And so Barry just says, there's a whole new chapter here in this book that I've written, right? The history of Barry Allen. And he says, but I did not write this, right? And it just says, you forgot my real story. You left me behind. I did the right thing, and all of you took my world from me. And so at that point, the laptop starts going crazy. It explodes. And then just like all this Omega energy starts pouring out of this thing. And Barry has no clue what's going on, right? Like, what is this, right? And he just kind of says, you know, good thing I made backups for all of this. And that's when the voice of Darkseid comes in, right? Stop playing games with them. The Time Trapper's sacrifice may have given Superman the ability to push me back, but you and I know the truth. The fools who oppose me have won neither the battle nor the war. My absolute creations are unfazed, undisturbed for now, right? Of course, referring to Absolute Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Keep in mind, yes, they showed up in DCKO, but they were plucked out of the future and brought to the current era, which is why if you're reading the Absolute Universe right now, there's no reference to DCKO, because as far as their timeline goes, it hasn't happened yet, right? But he says, they and the rest of their world remain my weapon, and I have another army growing. As the fight raged on to generate Omega energy on their world, the infinite multiverse did the same. Because keep in mind, this is a huge revelation. Yes, Barry Allen cut off the main DC universe from the rest of the multiverse, but the Absolute Universe is not cut off from the rest of the multiverse. And that's what Darkseid is saying here. Alternates, deviations, heroes and villains showing no mercy in their efforts to crown themselves the King Omegas of their worlds, each believing they could stop me. With each fight, the fire pits burn bright, and the Omega energy fuels me. Each will succumb to my will and my control. Anti-life. Once the infinite Earths fall, there will be a crisis of absolute proportions. I told you guys, we are getting a crisis in the Absolute Universe. We are getting a crisis in the Absolute Universe. Son. I called it. I told you guys. We are getting a crisis event. I'm so excited, people. It's just a really exciting time. It's a really exciting time if you're a comic book fan. If you are a DC fan, it's exciting as hell. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.